Someone cooked here. So I just finished Stone Ocean a couple days ago, the anime adaptation. And one thing I want to lead off with in this video, because this is probably primarily going to be pros, how great I thought the anime was, or some things I think made it the top tier as far as the adaptations go. One thing I want to say is the bench model sucks, right? I found out that they announced it ahead of time that it was going to be on December 1st. I remember that. But I just literally remembered that there was a third batch that got posted December 1st, 5 days ago. I would have never happened if they dropped these weekly. The hype was so dead after that second batch, which came out, I believe, September 1st. And I just forgot about it. Life came on, and I forgot that there was going to be a third batch. Please do not do this with part 7, which is a massive arc in and of itself. Do not do the batch format. It kills hype, and for busy people like me that are not able to just revolve around anime anymore, sometimes things just get lost and swept under the rug. Do not do the damn batch format again. I am telling you right now, I will be very pissed. So going from there, I'm just gonna speed through a couple pros that I felt like were pervasive in this series. So one big one to me is Jolene. I feel like Jolene really just came off the page and was huge in this anime format. Her mannerisms I thought were even more likable. I did feel like, and some people I think kind of pointed this out in the first batch. I don't really follow this too much with the subsequent batches, but I think her sultriness, her kind of rapscallion attitude, especially when it comes to topics of a sexual nature, that didn't get touched on too much with the adaptation. I feel like, but they did a really good job of pronouncing how honorable and how Joestar esque she is. That's that level of honor and justice, which heavy headed, beaten on the proverbial drum by Poochie at a certain point in the latter saga, or the latter batch. Justice is what makes it Joestars. That's a very recurring theme, and it's something that, as we get further from Jonathan, has to get pronounced in different ways. But honor does matter. It's something that is a spell for Jolene when she is in moments where she is reviewing her past. She thinks of things she did that she may regret, formatted against her sense. Sometimes, obviously, different code of honor than she had previously, but pretty much against her code of honor from point A to point B. The very beginning to the very end, she puts things against her code of honor, and that develops as we get further into the series. So some things that she might have done, and maybe even not regretted, she may regret towards the end. But I thought that the anime did a wonderful job of just really pronouncing how complex and I think well rounded that Jolene's breast character is. And I love Jolene. She's one of my favorite Joe stars ever since I started, or ever since I did initially read part 6, about 2018 or so. She's always been one of my top three, give or take, Joe stars, and I think that this just did a wonderful job of even cementing that status, in my opinion. So one thing that I think always held parts this back in terms of public reception, because this is for people who don't really follow the community too much, which is I don't think you should. Parts this is a part that is on the lower rung for a lot of people, especially if you're starting from the stand parts, which I tend to think is when many people start in terms of how they evaluate this series, part 3 on. Part 6 is one that is not well regarded amongst the upper half of the parts. Generally, you'll see 7, 5, 4, and some people, if you're kind of more of a fan of 1 and 2, you'll throw 3 up there. But 6 is generally held in this kind of stasis that's separate of the rest of them. And one huge reason because of that, at least from what I could tell, is the cast. I wouldn't say that people hate on the cast per se, but it's just I don't think they have the some of the standout features that some people look for with other casts that are well regarded. Like, there's not a singular Joe Bro that's heralded, right? Like, I think people like Hermes, who I think is generally considered the Joe Bro of this part. But she's not, you know, Bruno. She's not, some of the other people, not Kakyoin, Koichi. I mean, she's not some of these other ones that are almost as heralded for different reasons than the Joestar themselves. This is really a part that I always felt the the cast really serves to be development for the main Joestar more than any other part. Really, if you think about it, like at least in the manga, I always felt like these guys didn't really have too much value outside of how they progressed either Poochie or they progressed Jolene. You know, they kind of were just plot devices oftentimes. But one thing I think this adaptation did a great job of doing is giving guys and gals their individual moments that really feel impactful on their own. I think back to I think it was the first batch where we get Hermes kind of backstory with Sports Maximum, and I thought those were some of the best, really some of the best anime moments in this series. Period, from part one to just now. I thought it was massive. Her um, just emotional and a therapeutic moment of being the Shadow Sports Maximum. I thought that was incredible. Emporio, he gets his moments towards the tail end, last batch, that were impactful in the manga as well. Don't get me wrong, but we really get just how this guy who always played the back, like this is his own character. Like he deserved this moment, you know. Like obviously a lot of people would like to see just Jotaro being a Shadapuchi or Jolene figuring out some way to defeat Maid in Heaven, but Emporio deserved this moment. I mean, he was traumatized by Poochie before any of these Joe Stars came along, before any of these Joe Bros came along. I mean, he was the first one to really be affected by Poochie out of all of them. And he deserved the moment, you know, and so forth. I mean, Weather Report, I mean, you really get an idea of how fucking evil Poochie is with how fucked up he did both of his siblings and their lives. I mean, this guy justified a lot of terrible shit that he did to other people. And some of the most terrible shit he ever did was to Weather Report and indirectly to Perla Poochie. And even Anasoy, I mean, I feel like a lot of his moments, especially in the last batch, were of an extension of Jolene, which kind of is counterintuitive to what I was saying earlier. But I mean, this is just a guy that was very entertaining, very interesting, and even if he kind of reminds me a lot of Polnareff, where yes, I mean most of his highlights are going to be because somebody else was a part of that highlight, but this guy just had progress as a character from beginning to end in this part, and I really liked him. I may be bitching somebody here, but I thought they did a good job of really exploring the cast and really making them feel Foo Fighters. Yeah, Foo Fighters went out like a fucking G. You still felt like you still remembered Foo Fighters, even though she basically dies at the really about the halfway point in this part. A lot goes on past her demise, but she was such an impactful character. You still kind of feel like these characters really miss Foo Fighters even to this point, even though in both the manga and the anime, Foo Fighters really isn't like blatantly touched on too much after. I guess I really should say her passing, I guess their passing, but really just it's not too pronounced going forward after their passing. And even with that being a point, I still feel like there's a lot of relevancy that she had for a lot of different reasons. I could go into a different, more longer format video. So yeah, I think they did a good job with the cast, in my opinion. That just might be me, but so yeah, this might be again another like personal, not necessarily problem, but personal thing that I noticed. So a lot of questions were asked about part sit stands. A lot of part sit stands, especially the villain stands, didn't always make the most sense, especially when you're like kind of looking at how the powers could be used, and how the powers actually were end up being used. I think his name was Dragon Stream or Dragon's Dogma, something like that. I think of Sea Moon. I think of Maiden Heaven. I think of Underworld. There's a couple different stands that like were very interestingly depicted. Um, and sometimes what went into that were some restrictions in the paper format. Sometimes things just did not make sense when reading in manga, and that's what I think anime always brings, especially when you get to bigger moments like with Attack on Titan, Rod Rice's moments, kind of as he was transforming. I think the scope of kind of all that went along with that battle looked a lot better in the anime, and for a lot of anime, I think that the TV or film format just lends itself to be easily comprehended in regards or in comparison to manga and paper. So I just think that they did a great job of kind of really trying to break down and explain shit in this. Concepts conceptually, that's the biggest thing with JoJo. That's the thing that like really holds parts together from being in is concepts. And I think part six kind of begins this. I won't say it's a. It's not. I'm not trying to say it's the first one to involve concepts heavily. Like part five literally ends with this conceptual stand that ties in the entire story. So I'm not trying to say it's the first one that starts with concepts, but with how involved concepts are to the storytelling and the narrative in part six, that is something that is huge in part seven and eight going forward in this alternate universe that they go with. So it is important to underlie how everything spins from some concept. I don't want to keep on using that word in part six. Shout out to my AC. Let me go turn this. I'm gonna have to edit the AC out. Fuck my life. But everything stems back from some kind of foundation in part six. Luck, fate, gravity, excuse me, coincidences, Mobius strips, all of this shit that seems like, oh my god, this doesn't affect the simple battle, or this doesn't affect the simple conversation. Two people being drawn to each other. That stuff matters a ton in this part, and I think that this adaptation does a great job of trying to hold relevancy to how pervasive those moments are. They explain the fuck out of everything that I felt was somewhat tougher to understand in the manga. So I respect that, and I just love the. I thought the animation was great, even though sometimes it was a little bit too much three D. The three D shit. What do you call this, CGI or whatever? Like I know a lot of people complain about that in anime. I wasn't a fan of it very often here. It wasn't. It very rarely was offensive to me, but I wasn't always the biggest fan of it. But that's just me. I thought they did something. They had to do it with shit like Bohemian Rhapsody. It was just fucking huge. Sometimes you had to do it with that. So I understand why you needed to do it, but